If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This has been another episode sponsored by Online Horse College. If you haven't had a look at the wide variety of equine-specific accredited courses, then go to onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there. Welcome to another episode of Horse Chats. Today we'll talk to Larissa Bilston again, who's been a previous guest. We've been talking to her about equine nutrition. We've talked to her about calcium and phosphorus ratios, and today we're going to talk to her about oils in horse nutrition. But before we introduce her, I'd like to just remind you that Sophie Barrington from Archer Creative, who are the sponsors of today's episode, are the specialists, the equine marketing specialists. They do websites, design, social media marketing. So if you need any of those things, please contact Sophie Barrington at Archer Creative. You'll find her details on horsechats.com. Search for Sophie, search for Barrington, or search for Archer Creative. Now back to Larissa. How are you today, Larissa?
Good, thanks, Glenys.
Good. Larissa, today we're going to talk about oils in horse nutrition, and you've got tips for getting the balance right. So tell us a little bit of background there.
Okay, so oil is something that's been used by horse people for years for boosting the calorie intake of diets, but there's a lot of research and a lot of progression in our understanding and knowledge of other uses for oils in horse nutrition as well as in human nutrition. So I wanted to share some of that information with your listeners today.
Yes, because oil itself is a very broad subject. We haven't even started to talk about the different types of oils, but I'm sure you're going to, as usual, have lots and lots of information for us. The first one to talk about is the calories in oil, and it being very calorie dense.
Yes, so oil basically is pure calories, and it doesn't really matter what sort of oil we're talking about. So that makes it a really useful supplement if you're trying to help your horse gain weight or to support horses who are working very hard. And it can be helpful too for lactating mares who are pretty much, they're struggling to eat enough food to consume the calories that they need to put into the foal and the milk. Mm-hmm. So, oil can be a way of reducing the size of the hard feed that we have to give, because it's always very important that we keep the forage going to our horse's gut. So if we completely have to fill our horse up on cereal grains or super fibres, we're not doing the total digestive tract any favours. So oil can be something that we can utilise to make the hard feed slightly smaller in those horses who are having to have a lot of concentrate feed every day to support their needs.
All right. So are oils just for, horses that have lost a bit of weight or mares that are lactating? Are they essential to the diets of all horses?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, oil is essential to the diet of all mammals. Mm-hmm. They do a whole lot more than just store fat for energy. There's scientists working right now in human and animal nutrition, and they're learning a lot more about how fats work in the body. You probably remember doing a nutrition pyramid at school as part of maybe your science or your home ec studies. And right at the tip of that pyramid, oil sits, fats and oils. And it's because our bodies need them, but they only need them in small proportions. So nutritionists are now promoting fats and fatty acids as key nutrients, and they're learning more and more about how those fatty acids affect early growth and development, as well as nutrition-related and chronic diseases that occur later in life.
Okay.
So some of the roles that fats play in the body, they, as we've discussed, they're an energy storage tool that the body uses, but they also function as chemical messengers They're important for the membranes in all the cells of our bodies. They help the body absorb some vitamins, so the fat-soluble vitamins, that's vitamin A and D and E and K. We can't absorb those efficiently if there's not adequate fat in the feed as well. What else do fats do? They also help with controlling hormones, and they play a huge role in regulating the inflammatory processes in the immune system.
Okay.
So, when we try to sort of point back towards horses, we can use oils to help manage horses that have got dry, itchy skin, or other inflammatory conditions. So, things like arthritis, Queensland itch, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And I suppose too, we're becoming increasingly aware that providing particular oils to growing horses and pregnant mares is able to assist brain development. And we're looking at eye and heart health and boosting fertility and all sorts of things in mature horses as well. So it's an interesting field. There's just so much out there to learn, and the scientists are finding out so much.
What about wild horses? If it's essential to all mammals or all horses, what about wild horses? What sort of natural oils are there in a horse's diet?
Okay, so grass has oil in it.
Okay.
You know how horses look so shiny in springtime when the grass comes through and they shed their winter coats and they shine. It doesn't actually matter how mineral deficient they are or even how poorly balanced their diet might be. Most horses will get a shine on those spring grasses, and that shine is simply due to the oil in the green grass. So we're looking at somewhere between 1 and 4% oil in grasses, with your younger leafy grasses being higher in fat than more mature plants. So oil's always been a natural part of horses' diets, and they evolved to utilise and require it.
All right. So now your next comment here is oils ain't oils. You want to talk about that?
So thanks to Caltex for coining that phrase, oils ain't oils. It's really handy. I've explained that all oils, all dietary oils are pretty much pure calories. And that they will all put a shine on a horse's coat. But they're not all equal in terms of the roles that they play in the body. So the most common types of dietary oils are fatty acids, and they're a natural part of the horse diet. Most of them are that the horse eats, so the most important ones in terms of equine nutrition are polyunsaturated fatty acids. And there we're talking mainly about omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. And you've probably heard a lot recently about omega-3s and omega-6s, and we have to balance the ratios, and probably wondered, really, what does it all mean?
Yeah.
So when the horse is eating that nice green grass, she's probably getting somewhere around 4 times as much omega-3 from the grass as she is omega-6. So the normal diet contains both omega-3 and omega-6. And from those, they're called essential fatty acids because the horse can't manufacture those. But from those, the horse can manufacture omega-9 and other forms of oil that the body requires.
All right, so it sounds like the equine diet, should have both omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids to have a healthy immune system. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what we're aiming to do, I suppose, is replicate that balance that comes from when the horse is getting good green grass. We all would love to be able to provide our horses with decent green grass year round, but it just isn't possible for most of us in most situations. We are not able to all irrigate our horses' paddocks during drought. A lot of horses, especially once they're performing quite high, are probably living in smaller yards and eating a lot more hay. So under those situations, they start to get more omega-6 than omega-3.
That would be more with the modern diets, would it? The modern diets making it a bit difficult to balance that.
Yeah, you know, that's just the way the world goes. So what happens in the plant is the omega-3 molecule is just very fragile.
Mm-hmm.
When it's exposed to high temperatures or light or oxygen, the omega-3 molecules are destroyed.
Okay.
The omega-6s are much tougher. So, you know, the cereal grains that we harvest will have omega-3s in them, but after harvest, it's gone. When we cut a field full of nice green grass to turn it into hay, the omega-6 oil and the minerals stay in that grass, but a lot of the vitamins start to decline and the omega-3 levels pretty much diminish to nothing. So the more hay and hard feed that your horse is eating, the less omega-3 that is being included in that diet.
So the horses just aren't efficient then at converting the plant-based to omega-3 forms? Is that right?
No, they're not. So
okay.
the forms, you know, there's sort of, we're talking omega-3 as if it's just one thing, but oils are oils. And so there's actually 3 important forms of omega-3 in equine nutrition. So the one that the plants produce is called ALA.
Yep.
And it's got a long name. It's alpha-linolenic acid, but we'll just call it ALA for short. And within the horse's body, that ALA gets turned into 2 other forms. It gets turned into EPA, but at a very low level, less than 10%, we believe, from limited research. And then some of that also gets turned into DHA, which is the 3rd important form of omega-3 in the body. And we think that those levels are the amount of DHA that can be formed by the horse out of the plant-based ALA is very, very low. So when we're thinking about omega-3s, we need to think, how is their ratio with omega-6?
Yep.
But we also have to think about which of the different types of omega-3 is it most important that our horse is eating.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about the functions of is it PUFAs, PUFAS?
Yes, the polyunsaturated fatty acids, the omega-3s and the omega-6, they have an important role to play in controlling hormones in the body. So the omega-6 fatty acids, and they're the tough ones that I was describing that survive in hay and in hard feeds. Their role is to increase inflammation, and that's just a normal, healthy part of immune function. So the body has to produce inflammation to bring white blood cells to, say, an injury, or if it's protecting itself from viruses or bacteria or something like that in the system. The omega-6 fats are also important for cell growth and for blood clotting. So although you sometimes will hear omega-6s getting a bad name for themselves for those pro-inflammatory activities, it's an important and normal function of the body, but it needs to be kept in balance.
Okay.
When we look at the different kinds of omega-3 fatty acids, they're performing different roles, and those roles are still, you know, really important, especially in growth and development of young animals.
All right. Tell us about the seafood and the algae-sourced omega-3s.
Okay, so when I described earlier about the ALA, the plant-sourced omega-3, being converted into EPA and DHA, that's a natural function in the horse's body, but it's not a particularly efficient function. Because EPA and DHA are important in the body for brain and eye and heart health and development and function of the nervous system, they also play a role in cell membranes and in oxygen transfer, so they're really important in performance horses. Because those other sources of omega-3 are are also important. It can be a good idea to actually supply them directly to the horse rather than rely on the horse's limited ability to convert the plant-sourced omega-3 into EPA and DHA. So the best sources of EPA and DHA are marine sources. So we're talking algae, and ultimately algae are really the key source of these omega-3s. We can also supply fish oil, but where did the fish get the EPA and the DHA from? They got it from the food chain. So basically something ate the algae at some point along the chain and it ended up in the fish and in the fish oil. So it is acceptable to feed supplementary fish oil to horses as a source of EPA and DHA.
Okay.
They're not getting any meat out of that. It's purified.
Mm-hmm.
It's purified oil that we're talking about with fish oil. But algae is another means of getting the EPA and the DHA into our horses for those special functions.
All right. If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com. Now, just thinking about feeding our horses oils as a calorie source or including, one of the many commercial feeds containing the omega-6, the dominant vegetable oils, how do we keep the omega-6 and omega-3 balance correct?
It's always challenging.
Mm-hmm.
If our horse is getting some access to green grass, then I think probably in a lot of situations the horse is getting enough omega-3 relative to the omega-6.
Okay.
But the question we have to ask ourselves is, would there be an advantage in providing it with some of that marine source omega-3 as well for
mm-hmm.
the athletic and the reproductive benefits that are there?
Yeah.
The whole situation gets complicated though if we are feeding, say we're feeding a vegetable oil to a high performance horse to give it extra energy or extra calories to perform almost all the cost-effective forms of oil. If we're going to be feeding half a cup or a cup of oil a day, in some cases even more. Usually it'll be something like canola oil. Some people might use a blended oil that has sunflower in it. They're very omega-6 dominant, and so they can tip the balance of the whole horse's diet well over into having more omega-6 than omega-3. When we spoke earlier about the hormones that the omega-6s and omega-3s produce, the omega-6s produce the inflammatory effects in the body, and the omega-3s have an anti-inflammatory effect in the body. So it's important that we have more omega-3 than omega-6. The body just starts to have generalised inflammation, and that is where some chronic conditions are believed to start. So if your horse doesn't have access to lots of green grass, you're going to need to supply some omega-3 to tip the balance.
Okay.
If you are having to feed a high omega-6 oil for calories, then you're going to need to supply even more omega-3 to tip the balance back over in favour of the anti-inflammatory omega-3s. So pretty much the only way to do that is if you're having to feed oils for energy, you can choose to feed linseed oil, which is omega-3.
Yep.
And that will be expensive, but it will allow you to stay on top of the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. Or you can feed a cheaper vegetable oil, and I suggest canola rather than sunflower because canola is not as severely unbalanced in terms of its omega-3 to 6 ratio. And then add a marine-sourced omega-3. So you're able to provide a much what's the easiest way to explain it? We're looking at tipping ratios back in favour of the omega-3s. So the marine-sourced omega-3s are much more potent when it comes to tipping the balance in favour of omega-3 over omega-6 to reduce the general inflammation in the body.
All right. I think that, again, it's a lot to take in, but, I think the information you've given is excellent for people that have got questions about oil, horse nutrition. A lot of people might feed oil, but now that they're a little bit more aware of omega-3, omega-6, ratios and different supplements that are available too, the marine sources. I think that's just a lot of great information, Larissa. So thanks very much for coming and talking to us today. Is there anything you'd like to say just in summing up, just to, for people to have as a bit of a takeaway on that one? It's important to get the balance right, but just something to take away.
Yeah, we really covered a lot, didn't we, in this session today? So having the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in favour of omega-3 is very important for general horse health, but look a little bit more deeply into the types of omega-3. There's a lot of benefits in feeding marine-sourced omega-3s to growing horses, breeding horses, and high-performance horses. And, I think we're right at the cutting edge of learning just how much we can get out of those potent marine sources. So that's the EPA and the DHA.
Good. Larissa, I think this is another one for people to listen to twice, just to come back and make sure they've got all the information. But if you'd like to go to horsechats.com/Larissa Bilston, I think we're up to about 3 now. So horsechats.com/Larissa Bilston, or even if you go to horsechats.com, search for Larissa or search for Bilston, you'll be able to find that. And your contact details will be on those pages. But Larissa, can you talk to us about your contact details in case someone wants to give you a call now after listening to this, or contact you if they've got any extra questions?
Yeah, sure. So you can always contact me through one of our websites. And there's more information too on this subject on both websites. If you look at www.equinevitmin.com and go and have a look at the product, which is called Equine Vitamin Omega-3 Plus. There's information in there. And there's even more information at www.pharmalogic.info. So that's FARMALOGIC.info. There will be articles on feeding omega-3s in the blog. And there's also a product on there called Omega Balancer, which is a really heat-stable powdered form of plant-sourced as well as marine and fish-sourced omega-3s. So we've got a couple of ways of helping people deal with the very real problem of keeping the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio balanced in the diet.
Yep, very good. Larissa, thanks again for your chat, and look forward to catching up with you again sometime soon.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Now, if you're still there, you probably know that I'm absolutely passionate about education within the horse industry. That's why I host this podcast. My other venture is Online Horse College. Have a look now at onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.